Sometimes, in order to figure out why an individual is the way they are, we have to actually go back to their past childhood and realize, you know what? This is where everything went left. And it's interesting because with Papoose and Remy, they came from the example of black love to, what not to do in a marriage, right? And everybody's pretty much wondering, where did it go left, right? And when I was thinking about it, I believe I chalked it up to Remy's upbringing. Usually that's always the case. Like, for example, Remy, grew up in New York, Bronx, right? Dope MC, everything, right? But, she wasn't polished, right? So what happened was, through several talent shows and all that kind of stuff, she caught the attention of Big Pun. Like, Big Pun heard about her, extended an olive branch to meet her, right? And so they meet. Big Pun thought she was dope, and that's a lot of shoot. When Big Pun tells you you're nice, that's a lot. That's a lot. So, in the beginning, everybody sees, in the beginning, it was Big Pun and Remy Ma. Fat Joe was not nowhere around. If anything, Fat Joe, I don't even think Fat Joe had anything to do with Remy in the beginning stages. It was all Big Pun and Remy. So Big Pun took Remy under his wing and, said, hey, this girl's dope and we're going to do this, right? So as Big Pun's career started taking off, he started, teaching Remy, the cadence of rapping and flowing and all these things, right? And right when Remy was about to record, start doing her big career after Big Pun, right? Big Pun dies, and that obviously that was a blow, because you're talking about Big Pun at this time had, the legacy or fame or even respect of a Biggie Smalls, right? Maybe even more at that particular time, right? Big Pun was the first Latino to ever go double platinum. That was huge, right? Everybody in the industry respected him. So, and Remy was the next up. So Big Pun, probably one of the best MCs or the best MC at that time, he's saying Remy's next. Like, what does that do? Like, that's the crazy confidence. And then you got this individual, Big Pun, that's amazing rapper. He is teaching and mentoring Remy Ma. Greatness has to happen at this particular time, so you think, right? So Big Pun passes away and Big Pun dies. Remy's devastated, big time. And at this particular time, it's like, what is Remy gonna do? Remy at this time was young. Like, she was very, very young. When she first really started taking music seriously, she was just 17 years old, just fresh, doesn't even know what to do, right? And let's go back a little bit more, okay? Let's go back even to the beginning of her childhood, right? In the beginning of her childhood, her mom wasn't really around. She was incarcerated. So Remy was raised by her grandma. So now you started to understand the dynamics of how Remy thinks the way she thinks, right? And why Remy thinks the way she thinks. Now, on top of that, her mom was incarcerated. She never really started communicating with her dad until she was about 18 years old. Similar thing, drugs and incarceration. So, throughout that whole lifetime, the main component in Remy Ma's life was her grandma. Okay? So then now, Big Pun dies. And once Big Pun dies, Fat Joe took over, right? So Fat Joe steps in, and I don't know, I guess maybe he wanted to honor Big Pun's wishes or something like that, or maybe at that time Remy was seasoned enough that Fat Joe was like, you know what, I think this girl could do something. So Fat Joe puts all his energy into Remy Ma. I'm talking about like everything, like, normally Fat Joe, he wants to be in the spotlight, but whenever it was Remy Ma and Fat Joe, Remy Ma was at the forefront. So he made sure to put Remy as the focal point. So he does that. Fat Joe puts Remy on, one of the hottest songs on the planet, on the, when it came to Lean Back, right? Remy becomes a standout in that song. And as you start thinking, right, there's several types of MCs, right? There's MCs that could do albums by themselves, amazing, but there's MCs that could freestyle, and their niche is being featured on someone else's song or someone else's album, right? So meaning to say that I think Remy's one of those artists where it's like, if you put her as a feature in your song or on your album, she's gonna take over that song. But if you ask her to record an album by herself, it's not gonna happen. There's only very few people that could actually record a complete album and do a feature on someone else's album or someone else's song and completely be the star on that song. Remy reminds me of somebody like Cannabis, where it's like, if you put him in a cypher or if you put him as, you know, as a feature in one of your songs, doesn't matter who's on that song, Cannabis is going to be one of the best verses on that song. But you put Cannabis in a studio to record a full album, it's not going to work out. And to me, that's like Remy. You know what I mean? Now, there's other artists where it's like they could completely take over a feature and at the same time completely take over, completely record an album and that album's going to be one of the best albums on the planet. For example, Lil Wayne, you put him in a cypher or you put him in a song, he's going to have one of the best, he's going to have the best verse or one of the best verses on that whole cypher, right? And at the same time, you get him to do an album, self-explanatory, he's going to tear it up, right? Who else could do that? Black Thought could do that, you know, from the Roots. People don't want to rap with Black Thought because once this guy starts rapping on someone else's album, it becomes his album, you know what I mean? But at the same time, you get him to do an album by himself, amazing album. Who else is like that? Where DMX is the same way too. You put him as a feature, he's going to destroy every single person on that record. But once again, he could do an album by himself as well. This completely destroyed the industry with his album, with a solo album. Jadakiss could do the same thing too. You know what I mean? But Remy Ma is like I said, Cannabis and Papoose. Papoose is very similar to Remy Ma, meaning to say you put him on a verse, you put him at, as a featured artist on a verse, he's gonna out rap almost everybody on that song. But you get him to do an album by himself, it's not gonna happen. Because the reason is because these guys are like, I guess if you equate it to basketball, these dudes is like, or these girls are like and one players, you know what I mean? You put them one-on-one, they're gonna kill you, they're gonna destroy you. But if you put them in a team environment, they don't know what to do. And I think that's the issue with Remy Ma. Solo, she's amazing, but you put her where she has to be, where she has to play a piece of the puzzle, and she's not the top notch or the go-to person. I think that's where the problem comes into play. In marriage, it's like that. You can't be the number one go-to person. You have to play a piece of the puzzle. You have to play within the team environment. And Remy will always have issues playing in a team environment. And what I mean by Remy will always have issues playing in a team environment is because Remy, and I equate it back to her childhood, right? I don't see too much leadership. I don't see too much guidance, since when she was a kid, right? For example, her mom was incarcerated in the early stages. She was raised by her grandma. And then she didn't see her dad once again in the later stages until like 18 years old. That's when she actually started creating a relationship with her dad. So her dad wasn't around. And, 2005, because of no structure, Remy has issues problem solving. She has issues being in an environment where it's more than one person in the room, right? So, for example, here's another example. Remy Ma, she went to jail because she shot a good friend. I think it was her best friend. And the argument was over something stupid. It was a couple of $1,000 that Remy said that a friend took. So Remy hands her friend her purse. And then this is, from Remy's point of view, right? At the end of the night, Remy gets the purse back. She's missing $3,000, right? And so at this particular time, because of lack of guidance, or lack of knowledge, or just lack of critical thinking skills, Remy takes a loaded gun, cocks it, and literally threatens to, shoot her friend if the money's not returned. And as they're going back and forth, Remy shoots her friend, and Remy goes to jail. Now, as Remy is in jail, her defense was, mind you now, like, her friend could have died. Like, what happened was, after Remy shot her friend, she had no remorse. She didn't care if her friend was going to die, because she just hopped in a cab and went home. Like, she didn't stay around. And even after, when she shot her friend, Remy proceeded to just check the girl's purse to see if the money was there, the $3,000. So she was more concerned about $3,000 than, than a friend being unalived, right? So that goes to show you. I'm just saying that for you for individuals to understand where Remy's mind frame is, right? So usually individuals like that, definitely have entitlement issues. Entitlement is pretty much created by lack of accountability, right? So if you don't have anybody around you that you look up to, that you respect, that raises you, that's actually a good role model, you're not going to have any accountability for nothing, because at the end of the day, you call the shots for your life. You call the shots for everything, even when you're a kid. So Remy never had any support when it came to, just people around her that could advise her. And the example she had, once again, is a couple of parents that spent a lot of time incarcerated, or just issues with drugs, or just messed up environments, right? So that's a bad decision, caused by entitlement, caused by anger issues, caused by trauma, caused by lack of guidance, caused by just raw, just not thinking. Okay? So Remy's defense when she was on trial for shooting her best friend was she was the victim. Meaning to say that night she was saying her friend got robbed. Her friend was the one that robbed her. But, I do have to say that money was never found, meaning to say that her friend never had the money. They never found the money in a friend's possession or anything like that. So realistically, this is just really coming from Remy. And knowing how Remy is quick to get mad and have a temper and, impulsive. Like, it could have been that she just snapped and she was wrong. She was wrong about her friend. But once again, her whole life went down the hill. And mind you, at this time, she was becoming one of the biggest rappers on the planet, right? And the fact that she was a female, that was amazing. You know what I mean? So, when you're mentored by Fat Joe's dope. Like, Fat Joe, they call him Cap Joe, and he goes way too far when he tells his story, or maybe that's his gimmick. But at the end of the day, Fat Joe knows how to, grow talent. You know what I mean? Like, just look at what he did with Big Pun and even Terror Squad, and as well as Remy Ma, right? But Remy goes to jail. You know what I mean? So now check this out. Mom incarcerated. Father incarcerated. Remy Ma incarcerated. Everything comes full circle, because 2021, her son, her son was in some type of situation where in 2024, he gets arrested for a murder that was committed. It gets arrested and charged for a murder that was committed back in 2021. So, son is incarcerated. Remy Ma is incarcerated. The father is incarcerated. The mother is incarcerated. So now you're starting to get the big picture of where Remy Ma's mind frame's at. You know what I mean? Like, zero guidance, zero thinking skills, zero critical thinking skills, just a bunch of bad decisions compounded before Remy and even after Remy was born. So she meets Papoose. And when she meets Papoose, it's probably the first time Remy had any type of stability in her life. Like, it was the first time in her whole life where she actually had somebody that actually cared about her, that actually would do anything for her, that was actually protecting her, that would guide her, that would lead her. But since her childhood, she didn't even know how to handle that. She had no clue. Like, she actually looked at Papoose as probably, this dude's trying to control me, because up until that moment, Remy could do whatever Remy wants, whenever Remy wants to. So a lot of times when you have individuals that grew up in messed up situations, they actually confuse leadership or guidance with control. Now, as you even listen to anything Remy Ma says, or any video that, you know, she uploads, or any live that she comes on, you could clearly see that Remy Ma has zero accountability. She doesn't take accountability for anything. You know, there isn't no self-reflection. There isn't no humility. She's not a humble person. Just everything about her is self-gratifying and glorifying, right? But you could clearly see why that's the case. You know, she's not accountable to anything she does, because, you know, her parents, her mom and dad were not accountable, you know what I mean, for anything. So Remy just learned from them, you know what I mean? And once again, she meets Papoose. And like I said, Papoose is the first person probably in her life that had any type of structure, you know what I mean? Like, to the point where, like, Remy's life completely started changing. Now, Fat Joe put structure in Remy Ma's life, right? But they fell out, you know what I mean? Like, for a long, long time, they fell out. So, and I could imagine how hard it was for Fat Joe to, you know, just to lead or guide Remy Ma, you know what I mean? Like, Remy's one of those individuals that's like, you tell her right, she wants to go left, you know? It's almost like, what would you say? Opposition defiant disorder. You could clearly see that. I mean, you tell her she can't do this, she will automatically do the total opposite. Even if the total opposite was the wrong thing to do, she'll just do it because you know, she feels like you're trying to control her, trying to tell her what to do. And individuals like that are very, very deadly, because there's no gauge. There's nothing in that person's mindset to say enough is enough. And they're willing to go as far and as deep and as dirty as possible so they could win, so they don't have to face accountability. And usually when somebody has lack of accountability, which is obviously lack of responsibility, it follows with a pride, or they have a lot of pride and have a lot of ego. And then on top of that, just if you don't have accountability, you have issues with remorse, because you never think you did anything wrong. So even when people are hurt or you hurt people, it doesn't really affect you, because you're like, I didn't do it, it's not my fault. You don't even own what you did, right? So that means lack of remorse, which is lack of empathy. You don't want to listen to anybody, no accountability, impossible to lead or to guide. Those people are usually narcissists. And once that narcissism goes to a certain level, it can't come back, because after a while, if it's not tamed, the narcissist becomes a sociopath or a psychopath. You know what I mean? Like, if you actually check it out and you check out the definitions, what's the difference between a narcissist, a sociopath, and a psychopath? Is really honestly the personality traits. But they all share very similar characteristics amongst each other. So it's like a family. All those three share the exact same circumstance, the exact same mentality. Now, I went backwards to give you a full picture of why Remy does what she does. And, you know, because sometimes people are like, somebody might change, you know, they act this way, so maybe if they know better, they're gonna do better. But the truth is that once you're at the point of narcissism, you start dabbling into like a sociopath, you know what I mean? And definitely by the time you reach narcissism status, there's absolute almost no comeback. There's really almost no comeback, period, because you're at a point where you cannot be a narcissist and still have empathy. You cannot be a narcissist and not have a super overinflated ego. You cannot be a narcissist and actually care about anybody besides yourself. So once you hit the narcissism status, it only goes up, but it goes the opposite direction, not the other direction, right? So I believe Remy is actually a little bit beyond a narcissist, because, you know, her shooting her best friend, she actually still believed that she was the victim. Like, seriously, like her doing what she did with Papoose, treat him like crap and disrespect him, and all the messed up stuff she did to her husband, Remy still acts as if she was the victim. You know, like her decisions led up to her, you know, being incarcerated. Her, a lot of people not even wanting to work with her hip-hop wise, music wise. Her album flopped, right? But once again, she believes it was Fat Joe's fault. She believes she was the victim. You know, ever since, from day one, from a child up until now, Remy has always believed that she was a victim of everything. You know what I mean? That it wasn't her fault, that she didn't have a part to do in it, right? So, and like I'm saying, once you're at that stage, it's a little bit more than a narcissist. You're venturing into a sociopath, and there is no comeback. You know what I mean? There's absolutely no comeback. You're not gonna find a dude that did mass shootings or bombed up the school, or, you know, individuals that hurt souls, hurt innocent people. You never see them ever coming back. They always claim victim, or, you know, they always cry victim. And the best thing for Papoose at this time is to not look backwards. You know what I mean? You got a new lady, Clarissa Shields, a world heavyweight champion. Just concentrate on her, man. Don't look back. Do not even fall for any trap. You know, usually when you have narcissists, they are very great at convincing you to come back to the pit of hell. You know, just, Pap, I know you're wiser than that, and I know you tried your best, and there's absolute nothing more you could have done to help Remy. You know, you did everything possible without giving her your soul. You probably did that too. You know what I mean? God's blessing you with Clarissa Shields, and just whatever you were gonna do with Remy, whatever you were doing for Remy, do it for your new girl, and you're gonna see the appreciation that she has. You know what I mean? Your only mistake, Papoose, was like you loved so much, but you were blinded by by Remy's true intentions for you. And, you know, hey, it happens, you know what I mean? But do not go back. Do not go backwards. Now, Remy purposely chose Papoose because, first of all, Papoose' personality works extremely well with a narcissist, meaning to say that a narcissist is a taker. They take. All they do is take. But Papoose, all he does is give. So that those two combination will always work. And Remy took for granted a man that always gave, that she actually believed like she was the prize. And a lot of women are gonna edge her on. You know what I mean? A lot of women are gonna edge her on. A lot of women are gonna, you know, boost up her self-esteem by telling her she didn't do anything wrong. And to me, that's not a real friend. Just think about it. Okay. Regardless what she said about Papoose, she ain't never said this guy was an abuser. She ain't never said this guy did not love her. She ain't never said this guy was not a good dad. You know what I mean? She ain't never said that this guy was a terrible human being. You know, she just calls him a bozo, but I don't know what that means, right? Maybe in Remy's eyes that, you know, she came back and, you know, got a lot of fame. She wanted him to have an equivalent fame, right? But I don't even believe that, because if that was the case, if she cared about status as much as she say she is, if she cared about status as much as she say she does, meaning to say that she thinks Papoose is a bum and he's a nobody and he doesn't chase his dreams and all this kind of stuff. If she really believed he was a bum, why would she mess with somebody lower status and a person that disrespects her in the public? Okay, like Papoose, I think they were together for almost 20 years. It's coming up to 20 years now. Papoose has never, ever, ever said one negative thing about Remy up until, recently when he said, hey, you talked about my kids, now I'm going to talk about you. Before the last time Papoose went on live and to defend himself against the allegations of Remy, for that past 20 years, obviously there was, problems in the relationship. You never heard one negative thing coming from Papooses mouth towards Remy. Never, ever, ever. So Remy throws this kind of guy out and replaces him. And this is not no disrespect, because personalities are personalities, but Remy replaces him with Easy the Block Captain that's just like her. You know what I mean? Like, Remy loves the spotlight. Easy the Block loves the spotlight. Remy's wild. Easy the Block is wild. Remy's aggressive. Easy the Block is aggressive. So Remy's confrontational. Easy the Block is confrontational. You see what's happening right now, right? She traded in 20% for her 80%. The 20-80 rule. Papoose had 80% of what Remy needed, but Remy bypassed the 80% that she was getting from Papoose and ran off and chased 20% she was getting from somebody else. That's what that 80-20 rule means, meaning to say that you have a man that's giving you 80% of what you need, but you're missing 20%. So instead of realizing, hey, I have 80%, I'm only missing 20, instead of realizing that and realizing you're blessed, that type of person says to themselves, I'm missing 20%, and they chase the 20%. And they forget that they had 80. And by the time they chase the 20%, they leave the person that had the 80%. And then when reality kicks in, when the 80% is gone, they fully understand that this dude only had 20%. And that 20% was really superficial. It didn't mean anything. Like Remy had a whole family, like kids, everything. And she abandoned that for 20%. And the truth is that Easy could care less about Remy, and he tells you, listen. And Easy, at least he's honest, man. Easy's like, listen, I don't want to be no husband. For what? Easy don't want to have no kids with Remy. Easy don't want to marry her or build a career, build a family with her or build a relationship, like a everlasting relationship with Remy. For Easy the Block Captain, Remy's just a piece of leftovers for him. And that's how he treats her. But she left somebody that's willing to die for her. She left somebody that was willing to give up his career, his life, his freedom. And what I mean by that is that when Remy Ma was incarcerated, it's a stupid thing to do, but Papoose actually, he somehow got some spare keys to break her out of prison. Like, this dude actually tried to break her out of prison. So it's not just Remy here, right? Because Papoose made a ton of crazy, messed up decisions too. But the only difference is that Papoose's messed up decisions was based on the fact that he actually loved and cared about Remy. Now, I don't believe Remy Ma is ever going to find anybody else like Papoose, because those are one in a million. And I don't know if she'll ever realize that. Maybe she won't, because a narcissist always thinks that they never did anything wrong. But even though she doesn't realize, if you watch her life, it's going to go downhill from now on. And Papoose's life is just going to skyrocket to the top. And unless somebody's going to be real with Remy, or Remy's going to be real with herself, unless Remy's going to be real with herself, life is just downhill from there. And you cannot avoid the law of reciprocity, meaning to say whatever you put into the world, you're going to receive right back. If you put disrespect and hate and greed, and you put that stuff in the world, you're going to get it right back. So my advice I guess, to Remy, it's kind of pointless because it involves humility, it involves accountability, it involves being not greedy, ethical, it involves putting somebody else first besides yourself. So whatever advice I would have gave her is kind of pointless because it's like she would never do it. And yes, there is a point where you could go that there's no return. And I think Remy has hit that. And it's a good thing that Papoose has escaped before that point, because once a sociopath hits that point or a narcissist hits that point, they're taking down everybody with them. Anybody's with them, they're coming down with them. They're going down to that pit, a pit of hell, because down there is extremely lonely, and somebody with that kind of evil mind frame definitely wants company down there, because it's very lonely down there. But honestly, Rem, like, all you gotta do is one thing. Just remember this phrase. If you remember this phrase and you actually make actual effort into following what this phrase says, it's not about Remy. It's not about Remy. Just remember, it's not about Remy. If you remember that, your life changes. If not,